It's Tuesday evening, March 7th, 2023, and this is the Trampled Underfoot podcast show with your host, Mark Lindsay, out on the West Coast, and myself here in Florida, Eloy Escajedo. And we welcome you all. What's going on, Mark?
Man, just having too much fun and not having too much fun. We were talking back in the green room about how we tend to isolate ourselves. Um, Something I didn't touch on was weather, and it's just too damn wet and cold here to go out and really do anything. So I want to be indoors. I mean, and
Yeah.
that's all there is to it. So
There's nothing like the great indoors.
I'm serious.
I won't. I'm a homeboy though. So I like the comfort of the cave.
Yeah, I'm serious. Now, and that's funny too, because when I was younger, I'd be out in the cold. I'd be out, fishing in, 40, 50-degree weather. In 30s, nah, I stay in the house. But if it was above freezing, basically, yeah, sure. Why not? Let's go fishing. That kind of thing. But not anymore, man. I'm like, I look at the weather and I know it's only supposed to hit 45 today. I'm not going nowhere. Forget it.
I spent my 20s. I spent part of my mid 20s into my mid 30s out in all sorts of weather in the Everglades. Rain,
Mhm.
thunderstorms, extreme heat.
Yeah.
Um and I don't know that I could do that now.
Well, you were talking, what got us going was Eloy got a new air conditioner for his office there. And we were talking about growing up and this, that, and the other, and weather situations. We didn't have air conditioning. So it was hot and muggy here. And that's when we went and did all of our swimming down at the river, down at the lake, what have you. You'd take a cold shower just because it was 103 degrees and the humidity was so bad, you were sticking to the sofa. So you'd get up and go take a shower just to cool off.
Yeah.
So it but all that was in our teens and 20s. But you got somebody like Greg Snow Crusher. He is, oh yeah, okay. He's talking about he's Mr. Snowmobile. And in my teens and 20s, I'd have been right out there with him. But now it's like, do I really want to put all that stuff on and go out and ride around in the snow? No, I don't want to do that. I'll just wait for better weather and get on a motorcycle and, go be comfortable doing it, not encumbered with 52 different layers of clothing, walking around looking like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
Yeah, because everything has I don't know what it how it, I don't know how it works that back in the day if somebody said, "Oh, we're all going to the beach. Come on, let's go."
Mhm.
You just run into your room,
Mhm.
grab, a towel and your swimming trunks and this and that, and you jump in the car and off you went. Now I would think I'm going to have to grab all these things, jump in a car that I'm not in control of. Meaning when I'm over there, I'm now at the behest of the group
Mhm.
that I'm with. So I have to swallow that one and all these things.
Mhm.
That's what I think.
Well,
Maybe not every, but
I have the answer to that situation. I have the answer. I know why. Girls, girls at the beach. Four words, real easy. Girls at the beach. Hell yes, I'll be with you.
oh,
Let me go grab my towel.
we would be walking down the Ocean Boulevard,
Mhm.
and like there's girls everywhere in bikini walking around, and we'd be
Mhm.
oh my god, and we'd be like, oh, look at that, look at that, look at that, and like a nerd video or something, we'd all or movie, we'd all like crash into each other, and we'd practically be like
Wa-
a big, yeah, 'cause
Walking
we, oh
into
my goodness, look
lampposts
at
and garbage cans.
it was hilarious, dude.
Yeah. And now, yeah, okay, fine. If I'm there, I'll look. But now I'm not going to make a special trip to go check it out. You
Yeah,
know, that's age. That's all there is to it. That's age, man.
yeah.
We don't have to
Well,
like it, but we have to acknowledge it.
yeah, and I don't know if it's any if it's any. I don't know that it's a negative necessarily.
No, it's not. I mean, there are certain things that I used to like to do when I was younger that I just don't have the. I just don't care if I ever do it again. Some of it, things like that. Other things are like flying. I don't fly. I just don't. I've flown enough in my lifetime that I just don't. I have no need. I have no desire. If
You
I
have you,
figure, I figure if I can't get there driving, I don't need to be there.
you have the following syndrome in your a long time ago. When the music, well, how does it go? I forget now the melody.
No, it's more along the lines of the all the fuss that you have to go through just to get on the aircraft anymore.
Right.
It's the Bataan Death March with matching luggage, and that's
And they
about all it is.
and they just passed the deep cavity searches as well, so you have to go through
Yeah,
that.
I mean, dude,
The deep tissue. I'm sorry. Wait. The deep tissue cavity searches.
dude,
Are you flying coach? Because we've got this studded glove for that one.
yeah, they wear the gloves up to the elbows for the coach
Oh,
passengers.
coach, sir. Okay,
Yeah,
no problem.
yeah, let me roll this down a little more. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I just don't want to go do that. Now, Steve brings up an interesting point. You can now see live cams from a lot of beaches, so you don't even have to leave the house now. you know?
Yeah,
So there is that. I hadn't thought of that one.
yeah. You could put on like
Yeah.
a Hawaiian shirt and maybe
Mhm.
a little fruity drink with a straw or an
Yeah.
umbrella and sit in
Mm.
your with your computer and just look at the live cam.
Really turn on a little lamp, and turn all the rest of the lights on. A little
Maybe
lamp, so
two
it's not.
little.
Yeah, the sunscreen under your eyes. So yeah, dress the part, dress for success. Man, um, you brought up something, and people are out there right now going, "What the hell are these guys talking about?" You brought up something backstage in the green room about certain smells that just kind of bring back that nostalgia to you and everything else. That smell of rain on like dry dirt, that musty. Did you know that there's a name for that?
No.
There's a name for it. It's called petrichor, and it's that unique earthy smell associated with rain. Um, there's like
It's evaporate. Like there's some sort of
ozone,
evaporation.
plant oils, and things like that in the rain that the actual pounding of the rain on the dirt and on the plants emits.
Hmm.
So they call it petrichor. And I didn't know that until about maybe 3 months ago. And it was just wow. They even actually smelled that.
Petro
Petrichor.
petrichor.
Petrichor. Petrichor. Yeah. Uh,
Interesting.
yeah, Jim, I can't speak for Eloy, but we have enough of those. Thank you very much. You can keep yours. So appreciate it.
We could go in all sorts of directions with that.
Yeah, so let's change the subject and put Steve to sleep here.
Because I did see. I'll just say I did see. That there's. Well, no, I'm not gonna say it but there's plenty of like gag stuff,
uh-huh.
and they'll do like jars that smell bad.
Yeah. Yes.
Anyways,
Or
go on.
spray in a can. Yes.
Yeah.
Um last week we missed something. And I found out about I always find this stuff like the day after we do our podcast recording. I
Okay.
never find it before. But March 1st was the 50th anniversary of the release of Dark Side of the Moon.
Wow.
50 years. And I'm like, oh my God.
So it was released in 71,
Uh,
70.
March 1st, 73.
Dark Side of the Moon was 73.
Yes. Yes. March 1st, 1973.
When I was listening to it for the first time, it had already been around for 73. It had already been around for 20 years.
Yeah.
70, 80, 90. No, that's funny. It seemed older when I was listening to it in the 80s.
Yeah.
It felt like I was listening to something so anciently historical when it was just like maybe a decade and a half prior.
Yeah. It
15 years prior or so, which
it
is
was
weird.
it was let's see, yeah, March 1st, 73. But a good number of the songs were written long before that. Like Us
Mm.
and Them, they started working on that in 1969. So it was written by Richard Wright and Roger Waters, and it was just basically going to be a piano and bass piece. And then they got the idea to add the sax and wrote lyrics and all that other good stuff for it. But a lot of people will say that that is one of the most on the list of most important albums of the rock and roll era. It rates in the top 5. Do you agree with that?
I think it's a phenomenal release. I think it's a very special. Yeah, it's very powerful.
Now,
As far as on many levels, it's a powerful thing.
we can take the first two and they bounce back and forth depending upon who you talk to and when you talk to them about it. They will either put Beach Boys' Pet Sounds number 1 and Sergeant Pepper from the Beatles number 2, or swap them. You know, they bounce back and forth. But um, and then you have like Rubber Soul will be down in like 4th or 5th place.
Hmm.
But Dark Side of the Moon is going to be in that conversation somewhere. And my question to you is, why do you think that is? It was relatively late in the game as far as the development of progressive rock. I mean, you already had groups like King Crimson and the Moody Blues and what have you. So it was kind of late in the game as far as the development of progressive rock is concerned.
Yeah,
But why do you think people think it's so influential and so important?
there's so many. Maybe it has to do with the album cover in part because it's black, but there's that pyramid, and then there's the light beam,
Mhm.
which allows for the imagination to say that there's something, because pyramids are very
Right.
um there's something very mysterious about pyramids,
Mhm.
and that attracts the imagination of people, and then the blackness of it, and then the
Mhm.
coloration that's limited within this black space. So the cover, the music itself, if you think about it, the quality is very high in the
Yeah.
recording process, but
Yeah.
they don't overdo like a normal pop record.
Mhm.
The lyrics and whatnot, they are very sparse with their lyrics, and they allow for the music. So it's kind of like I guess it's kind of like a symphony, a rock symphony, um, themed type thing, and it's, I don't know, something within that, all that. I think it's good because of those reasons and other things that I can't put my finger on.
It, I'll agree with that 100%. It also kind of broke new ground lyrically and kind of went against the grain, as it were, because you had groups like Led Zeppelin. They were always, breaking out. They were, you know, uh, the immigrant song, come from the land of the ice and snow. And it just, they were forcing outwards,
Mhm.
ramble on and things like that. But Dark Side of the Moon was mainly introspective. I
Mhm.
mean, they talked about mental illness with brain damage. They talked about wealth with money. They talked about war with us and them. It was all basically introspection and getting people to look inward toward themselves. The first group that I know of that actually did anything serious about mental illness with brain damage.
Mhm.
Um, there were other, novelty songs about crazy people and what have you, but nothing
20th
about,
20th century schizo man.
oh yeah, or
Like,
even, they're coming to take me away, haha. It was, but it was a completely different mood. And then you have the tape effects, and of course the interviews with the roadies and what have you, um, and the people around the Apple studio when they were recording it. But it even though it wasn't a pioneer of progressive rock, I think you could, if you were to look up a definition of progressive rock in the dictionary, there would have to be that album cover right
yeah,
there next to it, because you can't listen to that and say, geez, what genre is that? I mean, it just screams progressive right at you.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
no getting around.
It really does. Yeah, it's a great album. It's when I was listening to them for the first time for me. Well, the first time I listened to it, I didn't. My friend, I went over to my friend's house, and his older brother had the album, and he
Mhm.
put it. You want to listen to Pink Floyd? I said sure, and he popped the record on, and it starts with just sounds I
Mhm.
remember back then, and I'm like, where's the music? Like I couldn't process it, you know. So the but growing up afterwards, when I was able to like it, um, it was that album and it was The Wall were my
Mhm.
two favorites
Yeah.
from them. The other ones, not so much. I didn't really care for their other albums much.
Um, I had after Dark Side of the Moon, I went back and I looked at their earlier albums, and then I got them and listened to them, but I kept coming back to Dark Side. I don't know if that was because, um, I don't know if that was because it was my first exposure to them, or if it was because it was so much better than the others. You know,
It's a great album on many levels. It
Now,
is.
metal gets a bum rap. A lot of people don't like metal. I thought it was fine. But I think Dark Side was just so much more than what metal ever could have been.
Yeah, I can't
So,
speak on the other albums other than The Wall and that one because although I did hear them and when they play them on the air and with friends and stuff, but I never appreciated it as well. What was a big shock to me was listening to Led Zeppelin for the first time.
yeah.
I couldn't, and I had, well, not, let me make it clear. I had seen the commercials on TV. Now you can get the full catalog of Led Zeppelin. Order now. Remember that kind of stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Oh, yeah.
and I would see that, and you couldn't get up and change the. So you just sit there and watch the commercial till it ended, and then they get back to the honeymooners or whatever the hell was going on
Yeah.
after hours, you know,
Yeah.
or maybe in between some sort of telethon or whatever. But because those were things we'd watch too. We'd sit through a telethon because there's nothing else to freaking watch, so you might as well
Yeah.
watch, you know, the darn time. Um, but with my friends, I was sitting in the back seat of the car, and they popped in um, the album with Stairway to Heaven on it.
Okay. Yeah.
I think it's either four or
That's four.
five. Um, I couldn't believe it,
Yeah.
and he blasted it. So I was listening to the speakers right behind me. I couldn't believe what I was listening to. I was like, "Holy smokes!" It just blew my mind. It blew my. I couldn't even imagine because I was learning to play guitar.
Hmm.
I couldn't even begin to imagine how you produce that sound from a guitar. At the time, I was like, I could not picture a normal human being possibly being able to to create that kind of sound.
What got me was the fact that it was 4 people. And I couldn't believe how they got that much sound out of 4 people.
Yeah.
And my exposure to Zeppelin was kind of intermixed, with other things. My mother absolutely despised Led Zeppelin. Okay. So we're riding around in the car, we're going somewhere, going to the mall or going shopping or what have you. And that's the only time my mother ever took control of the radio when my dad was driving, was if a Zeppelin song came on the radio, she would hit a button to change it to whatever station. She just did not want to hear that at all. And if I ever dropped the needle on a Zeppelin album at home, she would be in that den. I mean, like she was fired out of a cannon, man. Turn that crap down or put on headphones, one or the other. And I'm okay, plug in the headphones and off I'd rock. But it's funny. She could listen to Jimi Hendrix. She could listen to Santana. It was something about Robert Plant's voice that she did not like.
Yeah.
And it was just, I never understood it.
They were an offshoot of the. Well, we did produce
Mhm.
a documentary.
A mini documentary about him. Yeah.
Yeah. That they started off as the new Yardbirds, or the new
Right.
Yardbirds.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think it was it Keith Moon who said, "Oh, that'll go over like a lead balloon."
like a Led Zeppelin.
Well, he said a lead balloon, and they kind of twisted it around and said, "Yeah, Zeppelin. Let's do that." And the rest, as they say, is history. I think it was Keith Moon that said that.
Something like that.
It could have been. No, I think it was Keith Moon. But anyway, yeah. It was funny. So I heard little bits of Led Zeppelin tunes here and there. And the first album I went out and got was Zeppelin 2, which of course made me go out and buy Zeppelin 1 after I got done listening to it. I was lucky enough, I lived like about 6 blocks from a record shop. And so if I liked something, I'd hop on my bike and I'd take off down and I'd see if I could find the album, And then the rest, as they say, is history. Ended up getting everything that they ever put out, and getting and losing. I mean, I've had so many records and tapes stolen from me; it's not even funny. At parties and what have you.
Yeah.
But that was a completely different feel. That was for when you wanted to get pumped up, because for some reason, even their slower songs pump you up,
Yeah.
And
they were a great band.
Whereas Floyd always kind of mellowed me out. Even their, even something like Shine On You Crazy Diamond just kind of mellows me out, or even Have a Cigar. I mean, and they're not particularly mellow tunes. But I don't know. It's just a completely different vibe out of them. So
what was weird is that back then, again with my friends, they'd say, "Hey, dude," on the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't for them, I probably wouldn't have gone anywhere. Hey, dude, let's go, dude. I'm like, oh crap. I said, what are we gonna? What are you guys? He says, look, there's gonna be at the what do you call that place where at the science place museum, the telescope thing?
Oh, oh, come on, planetarium.
The planetarium. He said, we're going to the planetarium. And the planetarium, yeah, they're doing light shows. And light shows, yeah, they play music and they show the lasers on the dome, and it's fun. Well, I went a few times, and it's funny because the kids were all smoke. There was a cloud in the air in between the people. The kids that would go, but here's the thing: this is the planetarium.
I know.
And back in the day, it was like, okay. I mean, it wasn't necessarily allowed, but people did it anyways, and it was sort of, I guess, allowed.
I grew up in San Francisco Bay Area. in the 60s and 70s. We had Morrison Planetarium at Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, and they would do the laser shows there. The seats basically laid back. They were reclined seats, had footrests and the whole ding dong thing. And it was about an hour and a half long show. It was cool as hell and very professionally done with loud rock music and the whole thing, some Zeppelin tunes. And it was just an amazing, and it was the same thing happening. And it was a case of, do you think you're going to go to any kind of event in San Francisco in this era and not smell something funny? No,
Yeah.
you know, it was just to be expected.
I can't
But
believe that parents allowed, like, I can't believe, I don't want to say, I know you have to release the rope,
mhm,
and let loose the noose. Um, but anything's possible out there, for goodness sakes.
yeah. Well, I was fortunate in that my parents were both products of the rock and roll era. And I'm talking about early rock and roll, Chubby Checker, Danny and the Juniors, and, Buddy Holly. So they had that rebellious thing in them as well. And they weren't too far away from it when I came along. You know, half of the music I listened to were albums my dad brought home. He's the one that brought home the Woodstock soundtrack. He brought home Creedence Clearwater Revival and Blood, Sweat, and Tears. I'm the one that took that and transitioned. I mean, I listened to the Woodstock soundtrack and immediately went out and got Santana's first album because I loved him. Then he's bringing home Crosby, Stills, and Nash. And of course, I got to listen to that too because I liked it from the Woodstock soundtrack. And we kind of parted ways later on when I got into harder stuff and then into the progressive stuff. But he kind of got out of music and I dove in, head first. And I was just all over the place. I mean, I'm going back and discovering Muddy Waters and everything. And I'm having conversations with my father about Chuck Berry. I mean, for a long time, I thought Chuck Berry was the greatest guitarist in the world. He's no slouch, believe me. But I had not heard many more true virtuosos until a little bit later on, when that
Yeah.
came along and I was married and gone. So,
Yeah.
but it was a wild time to grow up, and you had the luxury of half of the catalog was already out when you discovered it. We had to wait for it because we were there as it was coming out. You know, I remember seeing that Dark Side of the Moon. That you couldn't escape that album cover. You couldn't get away from it. It was everywhere. I remember one record store in town, as a matter of fact, their entire big window, they had nothing but album covers taped up in the windows and it acting like a sunshade. You could not escape it. And it was the same with uh, Led Zeppelin's fourth album. When that came out, you could not escape that album cover either. But I mean, Dark Side's cover was everywhere. There were posters, there were big flags and banners, there were stickers of just that prism with the beam of white light coming through one side and the rainbow coming out the other side. It was everywhere, and that of course made people go out and buy the Ding Dong album. Did you ever see the original album, the that opened like a double album set
Of which
of Dark Side of the Moon?
I
Okay.
believe that the rainbow, or the light
Hmm.
ray cast into the inside, I believe, if I
In
remember well.
into the inside, and then you flip it around. The back of the cover was just that white light beam. So you had record companies that would tape up the front cover and then the inside open and then the back. It just laid them out in displays along the. It was really something. It 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 hit the culture hard.
I
So
want you to since we're talking about this, might as well, if you
okay,
want to. I
sure.
already opened it up as we were talking about this, but I want you to look up
Oh,
two categories. One, music albums that came out the year you were born, and the second one, movies that came out the year you were born. I'll go
okay.
first with a few. I'll take a few selections that seem reasonable, and then we'll go back and forth like that. I'll wait for you to roughly do that, and in the meantime, I'll welcome Robin, welcome Snow Crusher, Arneo Media, Jim Dockrell,
Um,
Linda. Am I missing anybody?
you're missing quite a few, but that's okay. All right, let's see. Oh man,
You got it.
I am old. These are some slim pickings, but go ahead.
All right, so I'll just bark off a few music albums that came out in 1975, the year I was born, that I think are pretty neat. Night at the
Okay.
Opera by Queen,
Wow.
Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd, which we were just talking about, Blood on the Tracks, Bob Dylan. That was still a good album. I prefer his older one, but I wouldn't have known the difference at the time because I was born that year, but that's not the point.
Yeah.
Physical Graffiti by Led Zeppelin. That's a double album that was really cool.
Yep.
Um, don't much care for it, but Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen. Foghat's Fooling for the City, which is a great freaking album. I have that album actually on my podcatcher. Fly by Night by Rush,
Oh wow.
classic freaking
Yeah.
Sabotage, Black Sabbath. Kiss Alive, which I think that's where the classic I Want to Rock All
Rock
Night.
and roll all night. Yep.
It's in that album, I believe.
Hmm.
And I'll end it. There's many more, but I'll end it with this one because I think it's the pinnacle in my opinion.
Hmm.
Still Crazy After All These Years by Paul
Paul
Simon.
Simon. Yeah.
An amazing album.
Yep.
So hit me with yours.
I don't think Paul Simon. I don't think he can write a bad. I don't think he's made a bad album.
No, maybe
I liked One Trick Pony. I even liked Kodachrome, and nobody liked Kodachrome. I don't know why.
I like them all, except
Hmm.
maybe some of the ones going into the 2000s. I didn't much pay attention to.
Well, I may not have paid attention to them, and I may not have owned them, but I mean, I've yet to hear anything bad come out of that man. Okay. This is okay. Now you got to remember the times. I was born in 1961, so we're talking about albums were fairly, they weren't really common. Everybody bought 45s.
Okay, well you could do it either way.
Okay. Number one was Run Around Sue by Dion.
Wow,
Let's see. Let's Twist Again, Chubby Checker.
wow, good one.
Um, Something for Everybody, Elvis Presley.
How's that one go?
That's the album title.
What's in
Something
it?
for Everybody. I don't know. I'm looking at a list of the
Well, since you're,
the top 25 albums from 1961.
let me see.
It's called Something for Everybody, Elvis Presley.
For everyone or for everybody?
Everybody.
I'll tell you now. There we
Okay.
go. So, give me the right. Give me the right. I slipped, I stumbled, I fell. Don't know that. Gently, I don't. Starting today. It's a sin. Sentimental me in your arms. Put the blame on me. For more. I don't know any of these.
Well, it
But it's
was
from a.
number 12. So
Okay, well, continue.
it was number 12. I mean,
Hey,
Let's
Jim.
see, Showcase by Patsy Cline.
Okay.
Um, Ray Charles, The Genius Sings the Blues. I mean, it.
Nice.
So we're looking at old stuff. You know, 1969. Excuse me, 1961. What can I say?
Very good.
So,
All right, let's switch to movies now. For me, 1975 movies that popped up the years that we were born. We're just a few. We'll just hit a few of them. So for one, there is. Let me see where I can go here. For 1975, well, there was Dog Day Afternoon with Al Pacino.
Yeah.
The musical rock opera Tommy was released.
Hmm. I
So
wanted to see that. Oh, I wanted to see that in the.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with Jack Nicholson
Mhm.
was on that one. Was that year? Let me see if I can hit a one or two more that look popular, at least to me. Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Oh, are you kidding? Oh, I got an interesting trivia fact about Monty Python and the Holy Grail that dovetails into our earlier conversation.
Okay.
One of the little pieces of trivia surrounding Dark Side of the Moon is it was the first hugely financially profitable album for Pink Floyd. And
Okay.
they were all huge fans of Monty Python's Flying Circus. So they found out, the group Pink Floyd found out that the Monty Python comedy troupe was running into a little bit of difficulty raising money for their first full length feature film. They ponied up 10% of the budget that got Monty Python and the Holy Grail made.
Wow.
The group got together and they financed 10% of the movie.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of does it for me. I mean, there's others, but those were the ones, the standout ones.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I
Oh,
could say, just to add one more, which I kind of remember after the fact, but it's called the Eiger
the
sanction
Iger, yeah, the Iger sanction. Yeah.
with Clint Eastwood, some sort of snow
Gosh,
movie. Anyways, your turn.
man. See, I was 14 when all those came out. So I'm looking at stuff. Remember, 1961. This is old stuff. The most popular movie of the year was Breakfast at Tiffany's. Audrey Hepburn, George Papard. Then you
That's pretty
have
crazy.
West Side Story. Oh my God. Did Disney's 101 Dalmatians.
Wow.
Yeah. Let's see. The Guns of Navarone.
Oh my goodness, dude.
The Misfits, Clark Gable and Marilyn Monroe. Um, Elvis Presley again, Blue Hawaii.
That's a classic, dude. I don't care how many people say. I think that is a classic Elvis movie.
Yep, it is.
Yeah.
El Cid
Oh
came out.
wow, El Cid. Who was the El? You know who El Cid was, right?
Hmm.
Um, is that a yes? You do know?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I know it from the movie, but that's about it.
Okay. Yeah, he was a knight, or a actual person in Spain
Mhm.
that during the time of the Arabs and Moors and such, he he was from the north of Spain. They don't know the specific details. They figure which family back then he was from, and they can't quite, as far as I've read. But he fell out of favor with the king
Mhm.
after helping with many battles, and so he just went across the way into another kingdom and joined up with the Arabs and started fighting and then it went back and forth. So like for hire kind of way, but he became a hero figure because at the end he did push back on the Muslims, let's say.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Okay. The
who
last movie that
who
I
started who started the El Cid? Was that
El
um,
Cid. Let me go back up to it. Um, did it come
I've
on?
never watched it, but I've heard it talked
Come
about.
on, find it here. There it is. Charlton Heston, Sophia Loren, Rafe Valloni, and
Okay.
Genevieve Page.
Okay.
So,
Anyhow.
let's see. And then the last movie I'll mention was Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea.
Oh wow.
Yeah, which was a movie, and then all of a sudden the TV series was made after that. And Irwin Allen did Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, I believe. Went on to later do a whole bunch of disaster movies in the 70s.
Think of all the history that those just the things that we went back and forth that are now mainstays or part of the timeline that we exist in, and a lot of people that just simply wouldn't even like even know about them or even be curious about them because generations have passed
Well,
since.
yeah, and I think that's kind of sad because there are a lot of people that just simply flat out refuse to watch a black and white movie. And it's like, man, are you kidding me? These things are so old. Yeah, but it's a good movie. Sit and watch, you know? Jeez. Let's see here. We got Jim McCullough says that The Blob and The Fly came out the year I was born. Not great movies, but classics. I think they were excellent movies. I think they both. But see, I don't know. I have a soft spot for those old classic horror movies like The Blob and The Fly and Earth versus the Flying Saucer or Forbidden Planet or I love those old movies, man. They were cheesy, they were corny, but they were excellent, you know?
There's something warm about those black and white movies from way back and watching them, and even the the ones in color, but there's something warming about, well, that's what you would watch late night or on
Mhm.
Sunday afternoons as a
Yeah.
kid during my time growing up. So
Let's see. Steve says Mary Poppins, My Fair Lady, and Goldfinger were the top three movies the year he was born.
oh wow, Goldfinger.
I vaguely remember going to see Goldfinger at the drive in.
Goldfinger.
And about the only thing so I couldn't have been very old because I'm not much older than you, Steve. The only things that I can remember from that time about that movie, and I don't even remember the character's name. It'll come to me pretty soon. But the big bodyguard with the hat threw the hat and it cut the head off a statue. And I can't remember the name of that character. He was the bodyguard of the bad guy.
I
And
can't even remember. Oh, the bad guy was called Goldfinger.
yeah, and his I want to for some reason Tic Tac is, but that's not it. It was a name, some weird name like that. Anyway, um, and hit the Aston Martin. I loved that. Odd Job. That was it. Odd Job. That was his name. The name of the. Let's see. Steve says Goldfinger would have come out when you were 4. Yeah, and we went to the drive-in to see it right here in town. The drive-in is no longer there; it's a baseball field now. But his Aston Martin, I loved that car, and in fact, my dad bought a model, and we had it sitting up on the mantle of our house. I was little; I couldn't play with it. I couldn't do nothing with it. He built it, and I just sat over his shoulder and watched.
There's this feature that um, comes from Family Search where they collate dates and stuff, kind of like what we're doing. And I'll
Mhm.
mention so, and it says what, like in this case, what popular song of the year when my great grandfather,
Mhm.
who was born in 1885, would have been. And there's zero
Mhm.
popular song because obviously the
Yeah.
situation. But for me, and then it pairs him with me or me with whoever in my family. And mine in 1975 is Captain and Tennille's "Love Will Keep Us
Keep us
Together." So
together.
that was the popular song that, or one of the popular songs that year. But if I go to my grandfather, which is the next, my great grandfather's son, obviously,
Mhm.
um, in 1911, the year that my grandfather was born, the
Mhm.
famous song was Alexander's Ragtime
Band.
Band by Arthur Collins and Byron G. Harlan.
You can
So,
you can still find that on YouTube. Come
and
on
I've,
here. Come
yeah,
on here. Alexander's Ragtime Band. Yep.
it's an
It's
amazing thing to, when my mom was born, it was or they have here in 51, Because of You by Tony Bennett.
wow.
And going back slightly a decade in 42, which I really love for my dad, Bing Crosby, White Christmas, 1942. So I think that those are pretty freaking cool. Yeah,
Well,
there's a
they were damn
section,
sure popular.
very, I mean, and you can't go wrong with that,
You
that
can't.
song, unless it's not Christmas and no bets are off. But you can go and navigate that to that because there's a section on the family search site which
Mhm.
is called Discovery, and then About, and then they have different categories and they pair you up if you have your relatives on
Yeah.
there. It
I'll have to check it out. I'll have to check that out. I haven't logged into that site in a while. I need to go back and check it out and see what's going on.
Yeah, they have categories of gasoline
Mhm.
prices, like for
Oh, I
for
don't. I don't
instance.
even want to know.
So for instance, when I was so in 75 when I was born,
Mhm.
I guess the average is what they're doing here would have been 53 cent.
Yeah.
When my great grandfather in 1885 was born, there's no data. But then
Mhm.
when my grandfather comes around in 1911, they still don't have data. And then my father, that's next, it was 20 in 1942. A gallon of gas was 20 cent.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I can remember here in town big signs. You'd have a gas station across the street from a gas station, and you'd see I mean, huge signs, full size sheet of plywood type signs. Gas war, 19 cents a gallon. Just
yeah,
trying to get people into their station instead of the one across the street.
this
I'm
is a
so
good.
I do remember that when I started driving, and this is in the San Francisco Bay Area in '77, gas was 55 cents a gallon.
Yeah,
So
55 cents in 77. You said.
yeah,
So according to this, I don't have anybody from 77. I'm the closest one, so it's 53 cent. But
yeah,
but that could fluctuate. But
oh yeah,
the
and it was
closest person,
regional.
and it was regional. But the closest person to me going back would be my mom in years. So from 75, which it was 53 cent in 1951, the average was 27 cents, 7 cent
Yeah,
more than it was for my dad in 42.
yeah,
So it incremented. Interestingly,
yeah,
um, not much.
yeah. And Steve says, and you get blue chip stamps with the gas. You remember blue chip stamps
I don't.
or S&H green stamps?
I remember stamps and a booklet, but I
Hmm.
don't. I never paid attention. Like I didn't use it
Yeah.
personally. My mom was probably the one that was focused in all that.
Oh, my mother was nutso for top value stamps, S&H green stamps, and blue chip stamps. And she would plan her shopping because you go on a certain day of the week, you got double stamps, or a coupon in the newspaper, you get triple stamps. And you fill up these books with all these stamps and you take it to the redemption center and you get like dishes or silverware or tchotchkes for hanging on the wall in the house or whatever. But geez, yeah. Oh man. See, Jim Dockrell was saying I was looking at a DB11 today. I still like Aston Martins. Me too. Me too. I still like Aston Martins.
They look nice.
If I had the money and if I had that kind of money to blow on any car, my first stop would be to the Aston Martin dealer. But you're looking at 300 grand for a car, you know.
There's
But
nothing. I had the luxury when I'll just mention this about cars. I'm not like a big car person. I just to me it's a utility situation.
mhm,
But I was in a terrible, terrible, terrible accident, um, and my car was totaled, and I was just a wreck, nervous like, and it messed me up too, but not. But it messed me up pretty bad, but not. But the main thing was my nerves because it was so shocking. I mean, I had that shock when the instant, my seatbelt didn't work, by the way.
mhm,
I slammed into that steering wheel as if I was dropping from a who knows how many stories.
mhm.
Um, it just, I mean,
Yeah.
everything went. I don't know if you've ever had shock
Oh yeah.
and everything tunnels out,
Hmm.
and it's like you're a tunnel, and
Hmm.
even the sounds, your body goes into some sort of protective,
Yeah. It's
and you're
called
like,
shock. Yeah.
yeah, and you're like, oh crap, this is it, this is it. And you feel, and my body started to stiffen. Oh, it was just a nightmare. Um, my dad was taking me to work because I no longer had a car, and he's like, son, you got to get a car. Let's just go get yourself a car this next weekend. Okay, boom. So we went, and I saw this. A lot of people think it's a wimpy car and this and that, but it was a Mazda Miata
Hmm.
blue with the convertible on it,
Hmm.
and it was sitting on high on the
Hmm.
corner, like the flagship of the. It was a used car,
Hmm.
but it was sitting there down somewhere in Little Havana, roughly the outskirts of downtown Miami.
Yeah.
Um, and I said, Dad, that looks so awesome. I wish I could buy it. He said, son, you have the money, right? And I said, well, and it's got the sticker. I said, well, yeah, I could, He said, "Just go ahead and buy it." And I'm like, my dad, he says, son, money is to purchase. So my dad was always very conservative in money and this and that. But for some reason that day, and I don't know what, he acted different in that. Maybe it's because he wanted to encourage me
He
to
was
buy.
tired of driving you around.
Yeah. But he said, son, if you like it, enjoy it. That's what it's for. And I was more like my dad that day than he was, because he's
Mhm.
always, he was always like, let's think about this. Let's take some time to, let's but not really. But yeah, I was way
Mhm.
more at that moment super. And he said, just get it. And I said, you know what? My dad's telling me to get it. And I went in and bought the darn Mazda Miata. It
Mhm.
was stick.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know how to drive stick. My dad got in. I drove my dad's car back home, and he drove it. He was enjoying. I mean, he had it with the
Oh,
top
I
down.
bet.
He had the top down. He was smoking his cigarettes like he liked to do. He was probably listening to his Spanish news radio, my local Miami whatnot. And he was just, and I was in front or in back. I forget the story, but he was enjoying the heck out of it, and I was in the, and he. No, I'm sorry, that's wrong. Let's scratch that. That is all true except for this. I did know how to drive stick. My previous car was stick. He had taught me with the previous car a few
Mhm.
years back. But the reason we went in that fashion had something to do with insurance or I don't know
Yeah.
what or some sort of thing like that. So we were like protecting the license or some crap
Mhm.
like that. So let me just make that correction. In any event, just to wrap it up, dude, I had a few good year run of a run
Mhm.
enjoying the heck out of driving through Miami. And at that time, I wasn't such a homeboy
Mhm.
by any stretch compared to now. Uh, Downtown Miami with the top down,
Mhm. I
driving with the
bet.
skyscrapers, and even though the car was quite a few years old, but it looked because they it had been painted blue,
Mhm.
and it looked like it looked like some type of those top those convertible, some form of a convertible BMW style thing.
Yeah.
If that makes some sort,
Little
that,
two-seater sports car. Yeah.
and dude, I enjoyed the crap out of it. It was such a feeling of freedom, like that American, that classic American feeling of freedom, the top down driving,
Mhm.
that sort of, it felt, I experienced that for
Yep.
very simple pleasures in life. I
Mhm.
experienced that. There was nothing like it.
Yep. That's
It was
one
so
of the
awesome.
things I do miss. We don't do it anymore, but Linda and I used to take off every once in a while and just go for a drive. And we'd put 100 miles on the car, just drive with no destination in mind. Just stop and get an ice cream cone here.
Yeah.
And then just, okay, which way am I turning? I'm at an intersection. Which way am I turning? Go right. Okay. So on off we'd go. And we'd drive for, an hour, 2 hours. And then, okay, you ready to head back? Yeah, let's head back. All right, fine. And then try to find home, because no maps, just drive. And say, well, sun's over there, so that's west. We haven't done that in a while. We
When
we
I
kind of
was,
we kind of burned ourselves out on it in Hawaii because there weren't a lot of places you could go. But
yeah,
we knew from our driveway, if we went up to North Shore and come around the east side of the island and then back up through Honolulu, it was 109 miles from our driveway to our driveway all the way around the island. So,
when I, as a kid, looking at my uncles,
mhm.
they owned, what was the one that Cannonball Run, the sports car that Burt Reynolds drove. It was a Firebird.
Yeah, yeah.
My uncle had one.
Uh-huh.
Roughly the no, what that one was black, right? The one
Mhm.
from Cannonball Run. My uncle had one that was, I don't know if I can say, sort of like that 70s golden orangey sort of
Okay. I know what.
gold, that kind of look. It was bad to the freaking. I mean, every time I look at the car, as a kid, you'd approach it, and I'm not a car person, but just the same, that was what the cool thing. You'd look at it and be like, "Holy smokes! Look at this thing
Mhm.
sitting there," you know. And my cousin, older cousin, my uncle's age, they were friends. He owned a, I want to say it was a Corvette,
Mhm.
some form of it was either a Corvette or something similar, and it was so shapely, but like how you would feel about a Lamborghini, looking at a Lamborghini now.
Mhm.
And I remember as a kid asking his mom, my aunt, my grand aunt, can I sit in it? And she'd let me sit in it, dude, like the buck. And it felt like, so those impressions, those things
Yeah.
as a kid, boy,
Mhm.
yeah, dude, yeah.
And just being out on the road, just driving with no destination. And I know in this day and age, people are like, oh well, that is so wasteful. No, it's enjoyment. Just the act of driving can be enjoyable,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and
Well,
just
yeah,
going and just seeing it,
yeah.
especially when
Not
you get
now,
on
but
the open road, not in town. In town, it's a pain. But you get out of town and you get away from all the crowds and everything and just get out on the highway and go.
and it depends on
And
the car you're driving too.
it does. It does.
Because
If
if I
it's
use mine, like right now, mine is kind of like riding a horse. Like it's like it literally, it's doing the, and you have to, and you're holding on and stuff, and you feel everything shaking, and the bolts, the rivets are. You
yeah.
feel like you're. So I really, and the shocks,
I was gonna
and
say
it's,
you might need new shocks.
and sometimes at the stop, I don't know if she gets angry or not, but when I make a stop at the light, she starts going like saying, "Why do you do this to me? I want to stay in the garage." And so, in that case, it's not necessarily so. But she's a faithful. She has been faithful. So I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
with a car that's kind of
we got 240,000 miles on the Jeep, so our trips in the Jeep are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. We've got to get another car. I don't want another payment. I really don't want another car payment.
I
But
stopped eating eggs. I I simply stopped eating eggs. Okay, so that's the story with eggs now.
Mm,
I know it sounds however it might sound. I don't care. Once the thing went like that, that's an abuse. No more eggs. Eggs are out of the question now.
Make friends with somebody who has chickens. You'll have more eggs than you would ever want. Linda's bagpipe instructor. They keep chickens. She comes home from bagpipe lessons. She's got a dozen eggs. You know.
I mean, in reality, not to get into it too much, but I'll just say everything has doubled.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
usually things like we were talking about gas prices,
Mm-hmm.
usually things double, or I'm sorry, forget that. Usually things increase
Mm-hmm.
in a sweep
Yeah, in
across,
a steady increase. Yeah.
but this is like, check it out. Here you go. Now
Yeah.
you're screwed.
Yeah.
No, that
It's happened before.
in the
It,
late 70s.
oh, in the 80s, yeah, in the late 70s, early 80s. It's happened before. It'll happen again. Uh, let's see. Steve says I'll do about 500 feet a week on my feet, Greg, but only when I feel ambitious. Yeah. Steve is the only person I think that's more of a loner than you are.
Not really,
Steve hasn't been out of his house in 2 years.
but he has his family.
Yeah.
I'm here, and I could make the argument that I'm here with my doggy, but
Mm-hmm.
let's be clear, you could also make the argument that Steve lives in a like more wooded rural by far, but I live here in this jungle of
Mm-hmm.
concrete, so I guess
Yeah.
it's a toss up maybe.
I stand corrected. 3 years. Has it been 3 years? Wow. I was thinking 2 years. Man. Yeah, Greg had said that he does 500 or 600 miles a week on his bike going nowhere. Yeah. And it's just the pure enjoyment of it. Just getting out, get away. You know, you can think about stuff or not, as the case may be.
It's better probably in that scenario not just
Mm-hmm.
enjoy the moment probably.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Just get on the highway and go sit, bought a little place. I'm going to stop here and have lunch and then go home.
I
You
can't
know?
promise anything um, to anyone or myself, particularly myself, but in these drives that I do,
Mhm.
which are local in order to
Yeah.
acquire the items that I need, I usually get in and I turn on the radio. I always did this, but for a long time now, I put on talk radio.
Mhm.
Um, and lately I've been just listening to the music, and and I've had to force myself because there's something you can get stuck in a cycle, which you've talked
Yep.
about in previous various times. Um, and so I've kind of tried to break that off, which you've talked about, but I can't promise anyone or myself because I know my natural inclination. But so,
Well,
and the reason being, well, go ahead, because you're
I
probably
was
going to say
going to
the reason
say,
being is obvious.
well, no, I was just going to say, I don't, I don't shut myself off from the outside world in that way. I do listen to the news, and talk radio is going too in the background. But when Linda and I are in the car, we're talking to each other. So I think it's rude to turn up the volume on something because that's a signal to the other person. I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah,
So, there is nothing going on that radio that can't wait. If it's a nuclear blast or something like that, somebody has launched the big one, or the big earthquake has hit or something like that, you bet I want to know what's going on. In which case, both of us are riveted to it. But there's nothing going on right now that's more important than her and I talking. So that's the way
yeah.
it is. So,
Well, the the issue of being cerebral at home,
mhm.
using it to analyze for whatever your personal, objectives are, to understand whatever the case, and having that being played in the background of your head all the time. Plus, when you get in the car and all that, I've and again, it's tempting to always do, but for me, the more acquisition of just if I, but there's something to be said. So I've been turning to the music and listening to songs that I like. I'm like, yeah, I like that song, and I used to just listen to it for the pleasure, and then my mind's like, oh, let's get to the news, and I'm like, no, no, no. So I've been trying a little bit that, but again, who knows,
You know,
So to
we
have a little bit more balance.
we all connect or disconnect in our own way. I just refuse to allow the problems of the world to become my personal problems. And I think I'm a more cheerful person because of it. I have to be more pleasant to be around because I'm not constantly raging about something that somebody 3,000 miles away from me is doing, which is none of my business to begin with.
Yeah, and you
So,
can't control
no,
these factors. We're pretty much along for the ride in terms of, you know, we're
I,
pretty much along for the ride
it,
because there's well, you get the point.
yeah, I mean, I can only do what I can do with what I got. So I'm going to have as much fun as I can. I'm going to have as pleasant a day as I can with myself and the people around me.
Yeah,
And, you know, that's just the way I decide I choose to be now. Didn't always used to be that way.
yeah.
Believe me. But now you had a movie you wanted to talk about. I
Mhm.
know. What was that now?
So I saw and I found it very good. Um, there's a movie called The Founder, and The Founder is about how McDonald's became what it became, and it stars Michael Keaton
Okay.
as the founder.
Mhm.
And if if anyone has not seen it, I recommend it. It's a super interesting story. It just so happens. Do you know the history of McDonald's?
A little bit, just kind of based on what I picked up in pop culture. I mean, I did a little bit of reading on it, but I never really paid a whole hell of a lot of attention to it.
So there were these two brothers, the McDonald's brothers,
Mhm.
and they were of Irish descent. I think that their parents were immigrants, um, and they moved out eventually to California. And eventually, they started making under the banner of McDonald's burgers somewhere out there in California,
Mhm.
and they were getting very popular. Well, I'm not going to go into the details, but I will say this: that those brothers had started something very something that hit very popular, obviously, but like considering the time back in the day,
Yeah.
they started something, but they couldn't expand. They had some other stores, but they had issues expanding because their level of uh what would be the word, they were strict in how they wanted things made. And
Yeah.
so this movie goes over in the dramatization of it,
Mhm.
what all they did in order to arrive at what they you would consider McDonald's.
Mhm.
But there was this other guy somewhere in Indiana or somewhere in Illinois,
Mhm.
somewhere back Midwest or further towards the east, and that's Michael Keaton, which is the founder. Even though these two McDonald's guys are actually the founders, but here's the thing: this one guy would sell blenders,
Yeah.
and the McDonald brothers needed a blender for a shake, so
Mhm.
they ordered I don't know how many, and this guy was like, "How many do you need?" And and this guy couldn't get a break. Michael Keaton,
Mhm.
um, as his character in the movie, he couldn't get a break. He couldn't sell a blender to save his life. It was like always one scheme after the other to try to make it. And he said, I'm gonna have to drive. This could be some sort of weird thing. I'm gonna drive out there and see what's what. He drives up to McDonald's out in California, gets out of his car, walks up to the window, and he's like looking at the place, sees the crowds,
Mm-hmm.
And so he walks up to the window. He says, "I'd like to order a burger and some fries and whatnot." And he says, "Okay, that'll be so and so, sir." And he pays him. And he's just looking around a little bit. The attendee comes back, hands him the bag, and he looks. He says, "What's that?" He says, "Your food, sir." He says, "But I just ordered it." He says, "Yes, and now it's ready for you." And he's like, the concept. Here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
That concept. And by the
Mm-hmm.
way, they're getting back to long wait times for food. So the McDonald's or the this industry is all total mess. But in today's, but he's like, so just it's done, and he says, "Yeah, here you go," and he grabs it and he says, "Where do I eat it? Where's the forks?" And he says, "You eat it out of you can eat it wherever you want. You can eat it right out of the bag. You can sit in your car and eat it, and then you just throw away the bag when you're done." And he was like you could see his mind was like, because that was not the theme in the era. That's not something. And he was like looking at it, and so he walked away and he sat down and he's looking around at other people, the kids, the moms. They're eating the burgers out of the bags, and he's like,
Mhm.
"What the hell?" And he grabs it and he eats it. He's like, "Holy smokes!" He's looking around. Well, the story unfolds from there, but that guy
Mhm.
that wasn't the McDonald's brothers
Mhm.
helped create an empire. The
Yep.
story is outrageous. It's awesome,
Mhm.
dramatized for movies, but
Obviously.
um, it's insane the where it goes.
Mhm.
He eventually take. I'll just say this because it's not like it's a secret. We've had McDonald's. He eventually takes control as the founder,
Mhm.
and the other two sold it off
Mhm.
for not much money
Yeah.
or a lot of money, but
Comparatively speaking, yeah.
yeah, insane history.
I
It's
might
a
have to check that out. I've just looked it up, and it's on. It appears to be it's on Netflix. I don't know if it's on any of the other streaming services. It was done. it was uh, it was released uh, in 2017, in January 2017, and it looks like it did, yeah, okay in the box office, but it I don't know, it looks pretty interesting. I might have to check it out. Let's
I
see.
liked it. I liked
Michael
it.
Michael Keaton, Nick Offerman, John Carroll Lynch, Linda Cardellini. Um, yeah, I mean, it might be interesting. I like I, I I guess they call that type of a film a docudrama. I kind of like them. Obviously you're not going to get every word verbatim. Of every conversation that like Ray Kroc had with the McDonald brothers. So they've got to take some artistic license there.
Mm.
But so long as they get the salient facts correct,
Mhm.
the timeline correct and everything, I like that kind of flick. I
Well,
really
it's
do.
it's a dramatization
Yeah.
and it's entertainment. So in terms of like when we watch things like the Viking movies, like the comedy one, Norseman, even though
Yeah.
we know that humans act funny like that. Like
Right.
regardless whether they're Vikings or not, they're
Mhm.
not machines, they're human beings. So you could
Right.
imagine that there would have been some sort of goofiness within, like humanity. It's not
Sure.
just this thing. So I'm okay with movies for the sake of fun.
Yeah.
And you suspend your disbelief for the sake of the fun,
Mhm.
you know. And for Snow Crusher, I will recommend Snow Bunny Zombies from Saskatchewan, Part 19, The Return of Ottawa Man. Um, I think you're gonna like that one. It was just released on back of the bus productions. uh, by the Nilo and Stitch brothers.
I just
So
had this vision. You said Ottawa Man, and I'm thinking about Ottawa Man. What would that look like? What would Ottawa Man look like?
what, I could just picture the same Superman logo, but
With an O instead of an
oh,
S?
yeah.
See, I don't know nothing. I don't know enough about Ottawa to.
Maybe he
I'm sure
has
Greg
fur.
does.
Maybe instead of like the tights, he
Mhm.
has like fur. He's got fur because of the cold and stuff. Maybe he's got more of that of a superhero
Now that might
thing.
be
And
because,
maybe
like,
he rides a moose into battle. Ottawa Man, and he like one of the action shots, him and the moose are jumping like over a ridge or
well,
something.
he's got to have an electro hockey stick. You know,
Brought you about
we're gonna
brought
put
you
a slap shot on crime. You know,
brought you by Slurpee.
now that would be Manitoba Man.
Oh, well, that's his sidekick then.
Yeah,
Ottawa Man and his sidekick,
Manitoba
Manitoba Man.
Manitoba Light. What flavor this time, Ottawa Man? Because I'm thinking Oregon Man would just be a guy in green tights, a nerdy guy with glasses and green tights.
And we already know what Florida Man
Yeah, I was
is.
gonna say we use your imagination for
Yeah,
that.
like that's a far gone conclusion now. It's unfortunate that that would have to be.
Well,
Harneo Media says it's McDonald's version of the truth. Um, I don't know. Ottawa Man, all politicians are. I don't know, Steve, that um
let's see who
that they
wrote
were
it.
unfair. I don't know if you watched it or not, but they weren't. They didn't skimp on what happened. I didn't mention what happened after how he acquired the business from them, but it doesn't. But he does act quite rough with the McDonald brothers. Um, I don't want to get into it, but I think it was. It leaves you the impression that this guy was ready to do anything to acquire the empire. Let's put it that way. So I don't think that and he would be McDonald's at this point in time, because he took ownership of it as the founder. So I think it's fair within the context of the dramatization that it was. And I'll
Well,
say that I say that pretty. I think it's balanced.
it was written by a man by the name of Robert D. Siegel, who wrote the screenplay for The Founder, and another one called The Wrestler. He's won a few awards. He's done 6 movies and a couple of television movies. And he's, yeah, I mean, he's well established, but okay. All right.
It's a good movie, and also remember, because it's set, I believe in the 50s, 60s, maybe the 60s. I forget that point, but I forget now. But they started pretty early on. Because it's set in that timeline, they also dress everything up, and they have the McDonald's the way it used to look.
Yeah.
So there's something, also like it's an American story that's not as clean and polished as they make it big because of their work and end of the story. No, it's got all this freaking, and then one guy grabs it from them. Um, it's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll look into it. I like things like that. I really do. So
The McDonald's brothers were first generation Americans, as far as I can remember.
Mhm.
For sure. What is it, Kroc?
Ray Kroc, yeah.
Kroc was a first generation American. His parents were immigrants from Hungary, I believe,
Oh, okay.
or Poland and Hungary, or something like that. So
I'm not
he was a
sure.
first generation American. Um, I'm saying that because I'm a first generation. And I haven't. But the point is that these were all people.
He
These were. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, what I started laughing at was I was just looking at this. Um, he bought the McDonald's fast food company in 1961, the year I was born.
Incredible. Who did Croc?
Ray Kroc bought it from the McDonald's brothers. Yeah.
61. So it started in the 50s. The whole journey started in the 50s. Um, yeah, you'll like it. If you do check it out, I think you'll like it because it was so freaking cool. It's Americana,
Mm-hmm.
and but yet, and this is one of the biggest companies.
Yeah.
Like,
Worldwide. Yeah.
I mean, there's little, comparison in terms of, and the story is, but just the whole unfolding of it, and this one guy that sees the potential, but the other guys were so hard, strict with they didn't want to open up more chains because they
Yeah.
couldn't keep control of the standards.
Right.
And because of that, this guy started to get frustrated. I won't give away the thing, but there's a bunch of stuff that happens, and yeah, it's insane. It's insane. So
All right. All right. Well, let's see. Steve says, I haven't seen the movie, but I grew up near where the original one was. Nobody knows the whole truth anymore. Okay.
oh
Um,
geez, Steve why? Go
and
ahead.
Linda says, and the first McDonald's was one town over from me growing up. So,
Steve has gotten in this thing about nobody knows, nobody knows, nobody knows, nobody knows, nobody knows. It's with every freaking topic. Every topic is, well, but we don't know for sure. We don't know for sure. Every time it could be DNA stuff. It could be like we did that psychological thing the other day. It could be freaking history stuff. It could be this stuff, that stuff. Oh, and by the way, none of my opinions are represent. What is it? How does it go?
the views expressed on this podcast in no way reflect on the opinions of our sponsors.
Right, what I just said right now. All of that does not reflect in any way our sponsors. You see,
and
how I
I,
had to
and
clean up.
and I think Steve will back me up on this. I don't believe those words just came out of your mouth because you're the guy that's always going, wait a minute, no, you can't say that. Wait a minute, we got to question that. Wait a minute.
No, I have a handle on, like, on not, I only believe what I can
I think
see or what's proven to me.
okay. All right.
Well,
Yeah.
with that kind of attitude,
I've got that show me or convince me kind of attitude as well. I do have that. It's like, okay, you've got a claim, present your evidence. You might change my mind. It's been done. I have changed my mind on any number of topics
yeah,
as evidence comes in.
yeah, but sometimes, I mean, just in the broader scheme, so you know,
But I will say we are kind of in trouble as a species if we refuse to believe in stuff that we can't physically do ourselves. Well, that guy climbed he climbed the Eiffel Tower on the outside. Well, that obviously has to be fake. Who could do that? Well, he could do that. Yeah, it's fake.
yeah, but
Just refusing to believe in anything that you can't personally do yourself. I think that sets a dangerous or a silly precedent.
no, well, about that, and you can tag that on to things like the flat Earth or any number of different. It doesn't have to be, but it could be anything. If you don't see it and you can't touch it and like that, then you don't believe in it. To speak to that, I think so. I understand why
Yeah.
they would do such a thing. Like, I understand why Steve would say such a thing, because at the same time you're not going to become a mark. You know what I'm saying? Or
sure.
target. But
Understood.
but here's the thing. There's a situation you're saying. If we come down to the point of, if we don't physically, like what Steve explained, then we're in trouble, because all of a sudden everything. Oh, here's the thing. There's also a position which I usually take, which is I'm driving from A to B. I'm on the road somewhere down that highway. I haven't arrived. And what arrival means complete comprehension and knowledge of said topic. And down the road means you're acquiring mileage as you travel. Um, so, there's a spectrum. But you could question things. You could have
Oh,
pending
sure.
issues. It is true.
And
It
and
is
I
true.
think questioning is healthy.
Well, let me just say this. It is true what Steve is saying, though. As a matter of fact, if you were to be as rigid as possible on the scale, you could make the stance of saying, unless I can physically see it with my senses, I'm not putting any value into it. Or if I can acquire the knowledge and see it, um, in reality, that is all that he knows. That he can solidly.
Quantify, yes.
So in a now rigidity is problematic.
That's what I
And
mean.
so
We're in trouble. I've never seen a great white shark, but I don't question their existence. I've never seen a tornado. I don't question their existence. So,
yeah,
that's what I'm getting at. There are certain situational things where you go, wait a minute, you have to kind of be a little bit more flexible than that. But but
yeah. I
I like Steve's point here as well. I believe that NASA tried to get Hollywood to fake the moon landing films, but they couldn't do it. So they had to do it on location. You know,
yeah.
well,
Well,
Hollywood can't fake it. We got to do it for real now.
well. So I'll use the extreme case. If we're honest about it,
Hmm.
you know, we know that we rely on volumes of knowledge
Hmm.
around us in order to understand things that we haven't experienced. Like, there's a temple somewhere in India.
Hmm.
We've never visited it.
Yeah.
We've seen pictures, and that's proof enough to the level. But now, if you were to fly over to India to visit said temple,
Hmm.
and you arrive at that airport and take a wagon ride out into the woods and you get there, and there's no temple there,
Hmm.
but yet there were pictures there.
Uh-oh.
You could start to think, well, what happened here, and you can go from there. But you wouldn't. The fact that you sat at home and saw a picture of the temple or read an article, that is a level of proof that it's an obvious thing because people are writing about and this and that, and you can put your confidence in that, but you yourself
Right.
are trusting in the world at large.
Well, that's
you're
all we can do. Yeah.
you're right, but I'm just delineating this. What you're doing by accepting whatever information, not that it's bad or good or right or wrong or more
Hmm.
credible or less credible necessarily. um, it's what's out there. You can't visit every place and that, but you're still relying on the world at large. The only thing you really know, like really, really know, is the things that, like, kind of like what Steve was saying. Now, I don't necessarily recommend that, and I know he was playing with the situation. It's not like he literally, or maybe he does. I don't know, but I'm just saying that as a matter of fact, what he's saying is actually true. That you don't know unless you can physically, and you really don't know. You can't prove it. You can't prove that place exists. So just the same thing with the moon landing. There's
Hmm.
there's plenty of overwhelming all sorts of things, but people still claim such things.
Yeah.
um
I mean, that's fine. And having that natural curiosity and questioning things, I think, is healthy because that's how we grow. That's how we push boundaries. That's how we um that's how we discover more. You know, it's one thing to say Mount Everest is the tallest mountain in the world. It's another thing entirely to go climb that sucker and stand on the top. And over the history of mankind, relatively few people have done that. Now, I'm not prepared to do that. I'm not willing to even make the attempt. I'll take their word for it
Mhm.
because it doesn't matter to me if it's 20,002 feet or 20,020 feet. I just don't care. It doesn't matter to me. It may matter to other folks, and you're welcome to make the ascent.
Yeah.
I don't care if I ever see a great white shark. I've seen enough pictures and video to where I don't have to jump in the water and check it out for myself. No thanks.
Covered in guts and blood.
Covered in fish guts. Yeah. Oh, here, rub the salmon eggs on me so I can jump in the water. Wee. Oh, there's
I,
one. You know.
I will say also, there's a balance with all this, and
Mhm.
there's a little bit of hit and miss with what we
Mhm.
believe and don't believe, and it's dependent from person to person.
Mhm.
And some people fall on the extreme where they such things as the moon landing and whatnot, and to them it's pretty reasonable according to the reasons that they give, that makes it reasonable. But here's the thing: if we follow um, what the outside world does, there are people that, so, like, for instance, there's something called the news that we all watch to inform ourselves. I don't know at what level you're trust or not trust or this or that, but if you look at the news, some people cold cut fully embrace the news as the actuality of what occurs to the T. And if the station that you're watching has some sort of particular leaning or not, people go with that and they believe that as their reality. But are they believing truth, or are they believing a version of truth?
And that's why I say I think questioning things is healthy because it makes you backstop your own opinions. It makes you check yourself. You
Yeah.
know, do I believe this because I think it actually happened? Or do I believe this because they said something that I agree with? You know,
Yeah.
so uh, Jim Dockerel says, have you seen the special effects in movies from 1969? They didn't fake the moon landing. Yeah. So, I mean, we could go in several different directions from here, but I think we'd just be rehashing things that we have already said over and over
Yeah.
again.
Well, I
It's
think, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, all right, go ahead.
I think that there's a threshold. There's a bit, especially with conspiracy theories,
Mhm.
there's a set reality at a certain point in time as one develops, that are things that culturally beyond, our control, are set in stone. And to say something different is laughable, is a point of uh, making themselves a target for ridicule. But then there's also an arrogance with society at large for things that they completely accept. I'm not giving a specific thing, but they completely accept, and yet they haven't experienced it. They're just going by what other people said, and that telephone game that we always talk about
Yep.
makes it so. But is it so because the majority agrees to it?
Mhm.
I mean, for instance, this is a little controversial, but I'll mention it in slight. For the past few years, 3, 4 years almost, we've had this thing called the insurrection of the Capitol and the this and this and that. Just recently, this past week, there was published video from Congress that was never released during the little tribunal that they were having. Conspiracies were abounding where people were suggesting, no, this didn't happen, that didn't happen, this did, that didn't. And the media was pushing they were controlling the situation.
Mhm.
People's reality was that this was one thing. Well, I don't know if anybody saw this, but they just published and they show footage that was released by Congress because, well, now it's released by Congress, because they're now in control
Freedom of Information Act. Yeah.
with a slight no. The new leader
Hmm.
of the House
Yeah.
gave it over to a news outlet, and they published it online, and they show Capitol Police opening doors, and this was not released before. This is
And
different.
just letting people in. Yeah.
No, and escorting in a friendly manner
Hmm.
the one guy with the horns thing,
Hmm.
all through, and even having together, sitting there and taking pictures and all that, and other things as well, and just going on and on, opening doors, opening doors, opening doors. The Capitol Police, but and that guy's now sitting in jail for 4 years, because of some. Well, the reality that was painted, that people, because the news says so. So that's just an example. And if it happens in this variety, and by the way, that's just, we don't know the further than what was published, but the point is, um, that scenario where the Capitol Police were allowing that in, why? Well, and then there's other questions. It becomes, now it becomes potentially conspiratorial reality, because there's things that are weird,
Yeah.
right? Because there's things that don't match up. And yet on TV, certain politicians came up and said, there's nothing to see there, that just was released. That's just to create problems, lying, or let's put it this way, misinterpreting what actually was published the evening before. And you see this picture. So if it's, if that's the case from the ones that are professionals, um, do we really know what is put in front of our plate? Do we really know? We don't know. We have a level of confidence that we place in the society at large because we have to get on with it. But do we really know? That's why I said, if you wanted to be cold turkey, you know, only what you see and you can actually touch, feel, smell with your senses is the things that you can say for sure, for sure. That would be on the opposite extreme side of solid yes. That's the only thing you can actually really confirm. But we live in a spectrum of situations. You
Hmm.
can't trust what you don't experience. You have to have a leap of faith in trusting the broader world around you. But again, are you
It,
going to
it,
not believe?
it's,
Are you not going to
it's,
believe that a pyramid that was a photograph of a pyramid, so there's no pyramid? Like, there's things that seem on the other extreme of the spectrum. So
yeah, there has to be a certain level of credulity and credibility, you know, and that's why I think questioning is healthy, you know. Um, I hesitate to even use the word truth anymore, just simply because it's manipulated depending upon a person's point of view. You know, you have a contest between two people. One wins, one loses. The winner is going to spin it, I won.
yeah,
The loser is going to spin it that the winner came in second from last.
yeah.
You know, both of them are technically accurate, but it depends on what your point of view is.
Let me mention this thing because that's an interesting. This reminds me of our conversation a few episodes back where we were talking. I forget the actual specific. It was something to do with what you're saying now. Um, ah, okay. So you had said that the winner writes the history, or something like that,
History is written by the winners, yes.
by the winners. I wasn't satisfied with that saying, and I mentioned as much.
Mhm.
There's something that didn't sound, and I tried to explain it, but I don't know that I did a good job. Um, so I delved into that that saying and all
Mhm.
these things and this and that. And I found a better way to explain it, which was satisfying to me at the time. I just never got back to telling you, but um, the people that argue that saying, it's a catchy thing that people say and this and that, they mentioned a bunch of things, um, but I guess the main thing that they mentioned is that, uh, and with what you're saying now as well, is that it's true that you'll have the one group and the other group. Through the lens of history, though, it's good that the one group, the other group, or various groups are independently, kind of like newspapers in a way,
Mhm.
are reporting from their vantage points. And then you have this, you can collate all this thing. And that's what historians do, that they collate all these things.
Mhm.
And so I looked into like what people do to write history book, like a bunch of stuff, and they explain all the disciplines involved. Like I went through a whole thing because I wanted to
Mhm.
understand that, and it was useful for me as well. And so history has the luxury of gathering all the information. So let's say England did something, and with the United States Revolutionary War, you have their documents, these people's documents. So through the lens of history, we can actually have historians that do that sort of thing, and they amalgamate it all together. And now you have a picture of what's going on in England and England and their points of views, America, so on and so forth. And so that clears up a lot of the biases independently. Um, but there's a whole discipline involved with that. And the last thing I'll say is that within that little search that I was doing, I ran into a variation on the theme of all that, which is there's something that they name as popular history.
Mhm.
And that helped me too, because I said, well, yeah, that's kind of what we learn. And they explain as much in
Mhm.
school. We learn popular history. It's not necessarily, it's hard to, we have to be careful, but we have to shy slightly away from it. It's hard to say accurate. It's a generalization depending on what's
Right.
favorable. But popular history includes novels where there is truth events in it, but it's not rigorous. Like they're not
Right.
footnoting and this and that. So it's not academic. So in those popular ones, people love to consume those because they're fun for people. The academic stuff is a little bit more rigorous and not so accommodating to human beings in a broad sense because people don't want to go through all that. So they explain all these things, and I was like, oh, okay. So that's the lay of the land, or at least it makes sense to me. So I found it interesting.
Okay.
Um,
But you're also talking about the difference between historians and a seventh grader.
mhm.
What's in the seventh grader's textbook is not both sides of the story.
No, yeah, I just explained. Yeah,
Yeah. So that's where I was getting when I say history is taught by the winners. The American Revolution, the textbooks that they're using in junior high and high school about the American Revolution are from American publishers. Of course, they're going to tell our side of the story. That's what I'm, when I say history is written by the winners, that's what it's in reference to, what is taught. And you're only taught one side. Of course you are. There are exceptions to that rule, but it's not the rule. So that's the only point that I was trying to make in that entire discussion.
they also mentioned that the saying that history is taught by the winners is a terrible saying, and they give. I mean, if you do a simple look at the history of the saying, it it they explain, and you just reminded me now. They explain that what and they go into it better than I would right now. But they say what a terrible way to give credibility to the honesty of one's country. They explain um, if you're the idea of manipulation of history, like they went into it, and I looked at that. Now you just reminded me. It's not. It's one thing is to be remedial, and another thing is to tell a lie, and then another thing is to lie by omission,
Hmm.
depending. So there so and I felt that that was the problem I had with the saying. But there's a lot on the topic of that saying, and
Well,
it suffices to say that it is a popular saying,
hmm,
notwithstanding.
well,
And it is true what you're saying, that in school they give us, from our point of view, because it's our point of view. And if
right.
you want further knowledge in that, in other cultures and other things, then that's available in the greater world.
Exactly.
Right.
But then you get into specialist study and you're talking about a scholarly work versus a sixth grade or seventh grade textbook,
Yeah, yeah.
and there's a huge difference. There's a major chasm in what is taught in sixth and seventh grade textbooks and what is taught in college or what historians study. And I'm not denigrating anything any of the historians have done or do, but just simple things. I'll give you an example. I was taught in school, sixth grade, I believe it was, it may have been fifth, that the American bison, the buffalo, was extinct. It was gone. It would never be back. They were all killed off by the Europeans in the 1800s. I say the Europeans, Americans, and people of European descent. We killed them all off in the 1800s and they were gone. That's what I was taught.
That's what I was taught.
I was in my 40s when I discovered that was not true. That was not the case. But how many millions of people were taught the same thing? I know it's a simple little thing.
Hmm.
People can be wrong. People are wrong all the time. I get it. I know it. I understand it. But when you take something like that and you put that in a textbook and you teach that to classrooms full of kids, I've been holding off on this for a while just simply because, and I don't know that we have time to get into it today. There's a thing called Gelman man amnesia. Have you heard of this?
No.
It's called the Gelman man amnesia effect. It describes the phenomenon of an expert believing news articles on topics outside of their field of expertise, even after acknowledging that articles written in the same publication that are within their field of expertise are full of errors and full of misunderstandings. So let's say you read an article in the newspaper about home recording on the computer. I don't know that you would call yourself an expert on that, but you're well enough versed in it. You've done it before. You can spot inaccuracies, you can spot misunderstandings, and you can spot just incorrect information. So you look at that article and you say, man, that's messed up. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But then we develop the Gelman man amnesia when we move on to the next article. How much of that article did they get wrong? But we never even think about that part. We trust the rest of it. We trust everything except that one article. And that,
We lean on. You're saying that we lean on the other things, and then that one is discredited or something to
yes,
that
we
effect?
can discredit this article. This article is, we know that that's wrong because we know what the subject. But we take everything else they say as being 100% true. Totally forgetting that if they can be that wrong in that article, they can be that wrong in everything else. So uh, my point about the buffalo in the textbook is if they got that wrong, what else did they get wrong? But we're willing to, okay, that's one little thing. They made a mistake. Somebody goofed. We should take that paragraph out of the textbook. Well, what other paragraphs did they goof on? I'm not saying be suspicious of the entire damn book simply because of one wrong line. But I think that if we know that this fact is wrong, can we say that anything else that we are not well versed in is correct?
Well, let me share my thoughts on that. And by the way, we can't, can we?
No, we can't. That's the whole
Right.
thing.
But
But
let
we're
me share.
willing to accept it as correct.
It depends on the person.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there. It does.
A lot of people accept if it's written. I read somewhere, it's not the first time. Like I've read it before in the past, but I never paid mind to it. But like recently, now I don't even remember now because I've gone through so many rabbit holes. But if you print something often enough, well, actually, we've talked about it too. Although there's so many references to it, even though you had mentioned it in reference to that one story from Wikipedia.
Mm-hmm.
I had read it somewhere else after the fact that we had talked about it the first time in another scenario where they discussed where if you write something down, there's some sort of psychological thing that it makes it serious.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it, I mean, not that everybody's going to take it serious, but once it's written down, it makes it so like somebody took the time to write that down.
Yeah,
There
it
must be
lends
something
more
to
credence to it. Yeah.
right. Um, so all that you're saying. So, but let me say this, which matches perfectly with what you're saying. Well, and with what I'm thinking about what you're saying. I think what you're saying, which I think is sounds reasonable, and I tend to agree with it. Let's just say I tend to lean towards agreeing with that. Um, is dangerous what you're saying, but it's part of humanity. If you continue to snowball ideas that are wrong, people have notions and are acting in the world around them with notions that are based on things that aren't true, and it snowballs into a situation where people have belief systems and all sorts of things that aren't true. But to them, if you even confront them, well, wait a second, this people will
Well,
not be able to even um, uh, allow the filtration of that into their brain because they've already created that. Now, let me explain
well, not
what I
only
wanted to.
that, but you have a certain percentage of population who are never going to admit that they could even possibly be wrong.
So let me explain this bit. There was you've probably seen it. I don't know if you have, but I ran into this, and I think it matches perfectly with also the things I'm thinking. There was an experiment done on some monkeys
Mhm.
where they took a bunch of monkeys into a room with a long pole and bananas at the top.
Mhm.
And the monkeys, one of them started to climb up. And as he was climbing up and he reached the bananas, the other monkeys were hosed with water. Like just, and they were, "Ah!" And they hosed the other one and it came down and stuff. And they repeated it and repeated it and repeated it and repeated it. And then they stopped with the hose. There's the bananas, which the monkeys really love. Every time a monkey would try to go up to get the bananas, the other monkeys, instead of the hoses, would drag the monkey down and beat hell out of that monkey. It no longer was the direct water hosing, it was that they knew what was coming. But check this out, it gets worse. Then they took all the monkeys out except for, I'm sorry, they left the monkeys there. They brought in a new monkey and he would climb up and they would beat him. Then they removed that. So they would beat the monkey that never saw the hosing of water. So he
Mhm.
had no connection to why he was getting beat up. He
Mhm.
wanted the bananas and so he realized that every time he'd go up, he'd get beat. So he stopped doing it. They removed all those monkeys. This was an ongoing, all those monkeys that were hosed the first time and only left the one that was never hosed but got beaten up. They
Mhm.
introduced a whole bunch of other monkeys. And anytime a monkey would go up, the monkey that the second generation monkey would beat hell out of that monkey without even knowing why he was beating hell out of him.
Yeah.
And as the generations revolved, the bananas would sit there and none of the monkeys would go up and climb and touch it. None of those monkeys would have known at all why that sacred banana,
Mhm. Was off limits.
but the feelings they all carried of danger
Mhm.
from that banana when it's something quite delicious. Translate that into human beings and the beliefs that they have on things that they think are true,
Yeah.
but could be a situation of what you're saying where it unfolds that it's not like the buffalo. It could be any other thing. It could be the topics that I've discussed
Sure.
concerning race.
Mm-hmm.
It could be any number of things to put it
Sure.
out there. We believe things now because of an unfolding of history that's caked
Mm-hmm.
on and taught to us. But that original initiation of whatever it is that we believe in
Yep.
any certain topic could have come from anything, and we would not even fricking know about it at this stage. So I found it interesting. You
Yep.
know, the difference being is that we're humans and we can reason things out.
Yes.
So we are humans.
Well,
So
we're supposed to be. And we're
yeah,
supposed to be able to reason things out. And we're supposed to be able to converse in a civil manner to one another.
yeah.
But
Well, but
in many, many ways, Greg is 100% right. Hey, we're the monkeys.
we're just monkeying around.
Don't try to climb my tree.
But
Get
isn't
out
that
of the tree.
crazy though? Isn't that insane, that experiment that they did, dude? Because it really like emphasizes the weirdness of the situation where there's monkeys acting on impulse of things that they acquired that they weren't even a part of.
Yeah.
I think that was an astounding. So anyway, so I just wanted to share that. But yeah, um, any little thing you say is valuable for a learning or an investigative thing. Mark just Mark just dropped off. Am I still? Can you guys still hear me? Let me know if you could still hear me, or if I'm the one that got kicked out. I mean, it doesn't look like I am. Is anybody out there can tell me?
My internet died.
Oh, you're back.
I don't know what happened. It just all of a sudden, boom, it was gone.
Was it me or was it you? Well, they're saying that yes, they can hear me. But what was weird is that when I was asking, well, look at me expecting instantaneous responses. See, I'm already to the point where I'm expecting instantaneous response. No, you dropped out,
Mm-hmm.
but it was so weird because I was asking, hey, could you guys hear me? Because I wasn't, and I didn't see any updates. And then now when you came back on, all the updates went.
Oh,
And they're
geez.
like, yeah, we hear you, we hear you. It's like, holy smokes.
Yeah, I don't know what
Tripping.
happened. All of a sudden, I got a white screen that said something went wrong. Try again. And so I tried to reload the page, and it can't reach StreamYard. Check to make sure you're online. I went, crap, here we go. And so I reloaded it again, and here I am. It came back. I don't know what happened. I really don't know what happened.
We can start a conspiracy right now, but we won't do that.
Sunspots. Well, no, it's all a conspiracy. This is done by the American Banana Association. A banana a day. That's all they ask.
Just one monkey left, says no pressure. When you exited.
Well, you're ready to land the plane. It's been 2 hours.
Yeah. I do want to say one more.
Okay.
Before we go. If you have another one, I just wanted to say that on those lines of the media and this and that. And there is something to be said about, what do you call them? Like, remember, like the Inquirer and this and that?
Mm-hmm.
Like those rags that are like.
Yes, the incredible Bat Boy is on the loose again.
But now we have internet situations where well, about last week, they started saying that a piece of the sun broke off. The headlines, a piece of the sun has broken off. Is it going to affect us? A piece of the sun has broken off. A piece of the sun has broken off. I couldn't help myself. A piece of the sun broke off. I got to check that out. I clicked.
Okay, Chicken Little.
Well, I mean, is that not a header that's going to get you or what? Well, so I checked it out because I seen it enough that I said, I have to see this now.
Mm-hmm.
So they got me cold. They got me.
Mm-hmm.
And the one person says, they're saying that a piece of the sun, but no, it's a flare, and it was sucked out into the vortex, blah blah blah, and they showed the thing. It was just a large flare, and it's not the first time. It's happened throughout history, and it's continuous.
Yeah.
And so it's a way. That's also for people's necessities. Um, Taking something, making it outlandish in order to acquire views and clicks and
Or
so
the
on. And so,
clicks. Exactly.
but some people, out of let's say 100% of people, let's say that let's say that 80% see that and could care less, or like, yeah, whatever. Let's say that 10% of those people never saw the conclusion that it's bullcrap, and they're like, oh man.
Yeah.
They now start to spread that to other people.
Yeah.
And so there you have it. So
Yep. It's a massive game of telephone.
yeah.
It's a
All right.
massive game of telephone.
Are you ready?
Want to buy a bridge? Yeah. I'm ready.
Okay. So, well, nothing. We thank you guys for coming out, hanging out with us. And I don't know where you went out to because you're still at home, but that's something you say when you're at a venue or something. But I said it, so I'm going to have to stick with it. We want to thank you for hanging out, and we are the Trampled Underfoot podcast show. We go live every Tuesday at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific Coast time. We have a site over on Facebook, Trampled Underfoot Podcast on Facebook. You could check that out. We usually post a little here and there about the topics that we touch upon. And we have a site on the web, which is trampledunderfootpodcast.com. You can catch our past episodes by clicking the Wayback Machine button over there. And we're also sponsored by
Harneil Media. You see him out here in the chat all the time. That's our friend Steve. He's the man, the myth, the legend. If you are thinking about increasing your web presence or creating a web presence, look no further than Harneil Media. There is no better way to get that presence developed than with your own website, with an email, with your domain as the email title. Talk to Steve Nealon. He can help you out. He's very, very competitively priced, and it's 100% personal service. When you're dealing with Harneil Media, you're dealing with Steve, not some nameless, faceless person in a call center somewhere that you will never have contact with again. That's Harneil Media, HARNEAL media.com, sponsor of trampleunderfootpodcast.com.
All right. Excellent. Well, you guys have a safe one and be good. Enjoy yourselves. Do the things that you love. And we'll catch you next week. See you guys.
Peace.